For 400 million years, sharks have roamed the Earth's oceans. Within the last century, humans have threatened to wipe them from existence. Today, New Age technology tempers hope for saving these great carnivores of the sea, providing scientists with valuable insight about the behavior of sharks within the marine environment. This knowledge will lead to making the waters not only safe for humans, but spare the sharks from their current state, an existence on the brink of extinction. Sharks have been called the perfect predator. For millions of years, their position at the top of the food chain has remained unchallenged. It is by human hands, however, that the shark's command over the creatures of the sea might soon end. Since we first ventured into the shark's domain, we have perceived our relationship with these animals as a battle of survival, kill or be killed. The perception of sharks as man-eating beasts has led us to believe that we must rid the world of sharks if we are ever to be safe in our oceans. It is this perception, combined with the overfishing of these animals, that has led many species into a position where their existence is in jeopardy.
Sharks are declining at an alarming rate, and one of the things that we're trying to do is to let people know about this. I think a lot of people are unaware that sharks are under such fishing pressure and that there is such a great danger of them actually disappearing from our oceans.
The fear that mankind harbors against the great carnivores of the sea manifests itself in the public opinion that sharks are an unlimited resource.
Look, I'm not saying that sharks are in an extinction mode right now. There are really 370 different kind of sharks, and I'm sure that all of those are not going to become extinct no matter what we do. But I am saying that there are some sharks that are definitely impacted, that their populations could reach a place where they no longer have a critical mass of males and females, and then they'd crash forever. And this would be a travesty. This would be horrible.
The main source of the shark's destruction lies in the wake of international longline fishermen, whose lines run up to 50 miles in length with as many as 4,500 baited hooks. Estimates indicate that in excess of 250 million sharks are killed each year, many at the hands of sport fishermen and floating gill nets. These nets can drift free, entrapping and killing sharks and other marine wildlife for decades.
We like to point out that sharks are important to the environment. In fact, they're vital to the ecology of the oceans. And most people think that the ocean would be a great place if it didn't have sharks. They seem to think that, wow, that's a great idea, so why are we worried about sharks?
The general public remains terrified by these animals. This fear, however, defies statistical logic. Worldwide, there are only 50 to 75 shark attacks annually, resulting in an average of less than 10 deaths. Bees, wasps, and snakes are responsible for far more fatalities each year, and the annual risk of being fatally struck by lightning is 30 times greater than that from shark attack.
What I think would be useful for the public to know is that sharks are not the death fish from hell. They're not your worst undersea nightmare, just the opposite. Sharks are as important to the marine ecosystems as lions are to the Serengeti ecosystem. They play almost exactly the same role.
Through ignorance and fear, we, as well as our governments, have allowed the harvesting of sharks to go relatively unchecked. Until very recently, there were no limits placed upon shark fishing.
And you don't have to go out and count the number of sharks there are. You can count the number of shark fishing vessels that started to try to catch them and have gone out of business, are no longer catching sharks. Why? Because the sharks aren't there.
Using their state-of-the-art riggings, modern longline fishermen are able to catch up to 25 tons of shark in a single outing. These commercial longliners, however, are only a symptom of a worldwide problem.
And so what you have is this. You have a lot of commercial fishermen going out, buying boats, a lot of people catching this smaller and smaller pie of sharks until pretty soon there are no sharks and they go broke. Bad for the fishermen, bad for the sharks, bad for the American people who have lost their resource, and bad for the government who hasn't done their job in protecting that resource. No, it's not the commercial fishermen that's to blame here.
Asian demand for shark fin soup has skyrocketed. Fishermen sell the fins for up to $22 a pound to wholesalers like Russell Hudson of Transocean Inc.
This 2-pound set of sandbar shark fins is one shark. This box of shark fins is about 90 pounds and is worth to the fishermen approximately $2,000 and is caught in about 2 days of fishing.
Across the globe, government fisheries are shirking their responsibility to regulate the harvesting of sharks so that they may survive in sustainable numbers. Many fleets of international factory ships capture the sharks with long lines, only to cut off the shark's fins and return the lifeless carcasses back to the ocean. If the entire shark was utilized properly, this bounty could feed millions with its meat.
To fin a shark has become a morally unacceptable practice. To take a shark's fins off and to discard the remainder of the shark is considered wasteful. That type of moral mistake has to be corrected by educating both the public and the fishermen.
Luckily, not all fishermen partake in this greedy slaughter. Off the coast of Florida, a more humane method of consuming both the shark's meat and its fins creates an efficient use of this valuable resource.
The sandbar shark is the mainstay of the shark fishing industry in the southern United States. This shark needs management and monitoring to be able to ensure a long-term sustainable yield so that it will prevent overfishing.
Most shark species are at the top of the food chain with little or no natural enemies. They cleanse the oceans by feeding predominantly upon creatures that are easily captured, such as the young or the old, the sick or the wounded. Through the shark's predation, they perpetuate the reproduction of healthy animals who produce stronger offspring, which ultimately benefits the entire marine environment. If we were to rid our oceans of sharks, the delicate balance that has existed for millions of years would be destroyed.
The way a shark lives is what I like to call a slow track. Sharks are born, they grow very, very slowly, they reach maturity at a relatively late age. There's even one shark that takes 30 years before first reproduction, and then they reproduce very few offspring. Now that, combined with the position of the shark in the food chain way up on top, where it takes many, many tons of plankton to produce a few pounds of fish that sharks feed on, those two facts, their lifestyle and their position in the ecosystem, make them ridiculously prone to overexploitation.
Who really is the most dominant predator on Earth, us or the sharks? By killing over 250 million sharks a year, the answer is clear. It is not the shark, but the human race that is the most ferocious of all living creatures. On Isla Mujeres, a small island off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, the local fishermen have realized they must fish in a responsible manner in order to protect the populations of sharks off their coast. Legendary underwater cinematographer Ramon Bravo has proven to be a major factor in this successful equation through his interaction with the fishermen of Mexico. From his home in this tiny fishing village built upon the island's rugged shorelines and white sand beaches, this man has become Mexico's most respected marine life filmmaker. With more than 250 episodes of the underwater world of Ramon Bravo seen on Mexican television, Ramon has dedicated his life to educating his countrymen about the conservation of their wildest resource, the ocean. Ramon's interest in the sea began at a very young age when he first made a name for himself as a swimmer at the Helsinki Olympics. His affinity for the water led him to experimenting with early scuba equipment, and he began to photograph and write about the creatures of the sea. This hobby soon developed into his lifelong career as a documentary filmmaker, where he's delivered his message of preservation and respect for the marine environment ever since. His driving interest and concern for the shark has been a theme for many of his films throughout the years, but in 1982, his career was nearly ended by an attack.
Filmábamos aquí
Filming a movie called Blood in the Caribbean. The moment I entered the water, the shark was all over me. I felt the pool, but no pain. Luckily, my crew were filming behind the scenes. When I saw the blood in the water, I realized that I had been attacked. If the shark swam away, I immediately headed for the safety of the boat.
The perpetrator of this attack was a 10-foot bull shark, implicated by the International Shark Attack File as the third most dangerous shark in the world.
As I tried to get out of the water into the boat, my right arm collapsed. This was my first indication that I was in serious trouble. I needed help and had to be lifted from the water. Then we saw the blood, lots of it. It was streaming down my legs from under my suit. It was like a nightmare, trying to remove the binding wetsuit. And to my utter shock, I saw that the bones on my elbow joint were completely exposed. Immediately, one of my crew members applied a tourniquet. Blood was gushing from the wound. Manuel, my assistant, called ahead on the radio to the hospital, informing them that I had been attacked by a shark.
With a severed artery and losing massive amounts of blood, Ramon lapsed into shock within minutes of the attack. Upon their arrival at the dock, the ambulance rushed Ramon to the hospital.
15 minutes after the bite, I was in the operating room for 4 hours. Luckily, everything turned out fine.
Thanks to the rapid response of his crew and adept reconstruction of his severed arteries and tendons, Ramon recovered fully from this attack. Today, fishermen from all of Mexico look to Ramon to educate them about the vital role that the shark plays on the marine ecosystem. In recent years, there has been an alarming decline in the shark harvest on Isla Mujeres. Ramon explains to Pepe that marine scientists are worried because fishermen are killing approximately 250 million sharks a year. He asks him if he has noticed a change in the shark fishing here in Isla Mujeres, and if he can still fish in the same areas with the same results. Pepe replies that the local fishermen are not catching as many sharks as they once did. Where they used to fish only 5 miles from shore, now they must go as far as 10. Years ago, they could easily catch 20 sharks in a week. Now they're lucky if they catch 4 or 5 in that same amount of time. Inevitably, there are those days during the week when they dread the trip home, for they will return to their families empty-handed. Pepe is sure that the number of sharks has definitely decreased. He tells Ramon that here on the island there have been fishermen who have caught sharks with only a tail and no fins. He wonders who could do such a diabolical deed. Where do they come from? No one knows. Do they come from the Pacific? Or did the Japanese do this? Crude by modern fishing standards, the fishermen of Isla Mujeres lack the funds for today's high-tech equipment. Their lines have changed very little in a generation, and many of their boats have been passed down from father to son.
The lines we use for fishing sharks are not miles and miles long, like in other parts of the world. Instead, we fish in a more primitive manner. Our lines only have 40 to 50 hooks and are not long enough to fish deep in the ocean. Years ago, we would get many sharks in a week. Now we only get a few. That is because in other parts of the world, they fish for sharks in a more sophisticated manner, and that has affected us here in our country.
The fishermen of Isla Mujeres do not have the opportunity to benefit from mechanized winches and multi-million-dollar boats. The primitive manner in which they catch sharks may at first seem brutal, but in reality their methods are more conducive to sustaining both themselves and the populations of sharks in the area.
I believe that in all of Mexico, the shark fisherman fishes with the intention of using the entire body of the animal, the meat, the skin, the jaws, absolutely everything.
The meat is kept fresh by immediately bringing the catch to shore and butchering it on site. In the hot tropical sun, the elements of nature can spoil the meat in a matter of minutes. It is skinned, finned, filleted, and made ready for market. Without the luxury of readily available refrigeration, the meat must be dressed and salted all in the same day it is caught. The fisherman explains that they worked all day salting it. They will resalt it tomorrow, then in 3 to 4 days they will put it in the sun to dry. A walk through the streets of Isla Mujeres shows that the fabric of the island's culture and economy rely on the shark's resources. Its skin is used in the making of handbags, beautiful to the eye and nearly impervious to scuffs and scratches. The shark's jaws are sold as souvenirs, and its teeth are finely polished and set into exotic jewelry. With the entire economy of Isla Mujeres depending upon the fishing industry, the people of the island have a vested interest in protecting the shark. People like Ramon Bravo lead the way in this fight against the shark's wanton destruction.
Due to the movies and the documentaries which have presented the shark as an unimaginable, terrible creature, it sometimes seems doubtful that we could protect it. All of the nations in the world need to unite to protect these creatures. These creatures are perfect in their form, yet the shark is truly extraordinary.
By advocating the education of the public and the implementation of worldwide fishing regulations, the shark might have a chance to roam the oceans in the future, as it has for the past 400 million years. World-renowned shark researcher and inventor Eddie Paul is developing prototype instruments to unravel the mysteries that surround this elusive animal. Working at his lab in El Segundo, California, Eddie is manufacturing a video camera that will enable him to view for the first time ever inside the stomach of a live shark. This tiny camera is mounted next to 6 infrared light emitters that will illuminate the stomach's interior. The camera and its components are contained inside the nose cone of a Sidewinder missile. In the history of shark research, no one has ever observed the stomach contents of a live shark. Eddie makes last-minute adjustments to his equipment before teaming up with Ramon Bravo, 2,000 miles southeast on Isla Mujeres. With Eddie's inventions and Ramon's vast knowledge, they hope that their experiences here will lead to a deeper understanding of these great animals.
We want to check the contents of the stomach to find out what the shark's normal diet would be on this particular shark. We also want to see the volume of the contents of the stomach, like if it's full or if it's empty. We know the fish on the long line that caught the shark will be in there, but we want to see if there's a lot more things in there if it came to the long line because of hunger. We always hear that they're prompted by hunger, and we're wondering if they actually have a totally empty stomach at the time they come in to bite on the hook. Another big advantage of this is that we can put this in the shark's stomach to look at his contents without killing the shark, which now is, they have to catch the shark, cut it open, spread everything out on the deck to see what it ate, and the shark dies.
This brutal practice is commonplace when humans are attacked by sharks. In an effort to find this rogue killer, professional hunters comb the sea, catching and gutting every shark they can find, hoping to discover human remains in its stomach.
Yeah, and then you let it loose when you're done, and he's mad, but he's okay.
Yes.
You think this will fit down his throat?
Perfect.
Yeah, as long as my hand is off of it.
Yes.
Eddie Paul has brought another one of his inventions with him, a specially designed bite meter to test the force that is generated by the jaws of a shark. Inside the protective polymer shell is conductive foam. As the shark's jaws clamp down, the bite meter is compressed, creating less resistance. With an ohm meter, Eddie will measure the decrease in resistance and will convert the ohm readings into pounds per square inch.
One of the tests we want to try while we're down here is a bite test. We want to check the pound of pressure exerted by a shark's jaw in the ocean when he bites down on something, because we're going to be building a shark suit out of plastic, which is going to be a lot safer than the chainmail suits they use now.
Local shark fisherman Pepe Magueña has been fishing in these waters for 30 years. Ramon explains to Pepe that Eddie and his crew have come to Mexico to do some shark research. They would like to know if Pepe will try and catch a shark for their studies, either a tiger shark or a bull shark. It is very important, however, that the shark be kept alive. Pepe agrees and will begin preparations in the morning. As a veteran shark fisherman, he has learned that shark fishing in this area has become unpredictable at best. With only a handful of animals caught in an average week, Eddie and Ramon can only hope that soon the fishermen will return with a live shark in tow. Today, a rare occurrence has taken place. The fishermen have caught an 8-foot tiger shark. Once plentiful in these waters, the tiger is now a sparse commodity, only caught once or twice a month on the long lines of the local fishermen. The tiger shark can reach a length of over 15 feet and is responsible for more attacks upon man than any other shark except the great white. Because of the tiger shark's potential ferocity, Eddie determines that he will forego testing with his sensitive gear and provide Ramon with an opportunity to photograph the shark for an upcoming feature film. Even though the fish will be exhausted from its fight, Ramon warns his crew of the great danger that exists. He explains that the most important thing there to remember is that when the animal begins to recuperate, they must release it. Don't try to chase after the shark, he warns. If it wants to go, let it. He doesn't want any errors or accidents. And they are to remember the animal is just tired, but it's still a shark, and they don't dare forget it. While the men prepare their equipment, the fishermen pull the shark behind their boat to keep water flowing through its gills. When all is ready, Ramon enters the water. Facundo, one of Mexico's most skilled shark handlers, cautiously holds the shark as Ramon gets into position with his camera. The window of opportunity is brief before the shark revives, and the crew must act quickly. In its delirium, the shark is made to swim from handler to handler as Ramon catches these rare moments on film. The handlers have no protection against the shark in case it would decide to attack. Despite its relatively small size, the tiger shark could fatally injure one of the divers in the blink of an eye. Ramon's passion is to save the creatures of the sea. Shooting sequences such as these allows him to be involved with marine wildlife while supporting himself at the same time. As filming continues, the risks mount. The tiger's razor-sharp teeth are a lunge away from inflicting a lethal bite. Time is running short for Ramon and his crew, and filming must be completed. Manuel motions to Ramon that the shark is reviving. Ramon sees that handling it much longer will soon become dangerous and makes the decision to set it free so as to avoid an accident. With its release, the tiger shark will be spared certain death on the long lines of the Isla Mujeres fishermen. This awe-inspiring animal is lucky. It will live to see another day.
Ramón, a ver si me escuchas. Ramón, a ver si me escuchas. Tengo un tiburón de...
The fishermen have caught another shark, this time a large bull shark. Upon hearing the news, Ramon, Eddie, and their crew waste little time. Because of its large size, massive jaws, and its proportionately large teeth, the bull shark is a formidable adversary and must be treated with the utmost care to ensure both the safety of the shark and the crew. Months of work is put on the line as Eddie Paul carefully puts his invention through its maiden tasks. Eddie's wife Renee assists by viewing and recording these never-before-seen pictures inside the stomach of a live shark. The camera makes its way into the shark's mouth, past its razor-sharp teeth.
I'm inside his mouth.
It immediately enters the throat, where the gill slots are visible on either side. The pharyngeal muscle separates the throat from the esophagus and is usually closed unless an unfortunate victim is passing through it.
What do you see?
Inside his stomach.
What's he got in there? Anybody we know?
The esophagus is identifiable by whitish longitudinal folds. As the camera goes deeper, the folds disappear, indicating that we are now in the shark's stomach. In the case of this bull shark, Eddie's empty stomach theory holds true. Only the scant remains of bait fish are apparent, proving that the shark approached the long line out of hunger.
I don't see anything. mean, I can't see anything inside his stomach. I think
to be bothering him.
he seems to be empty. Oh, it's incredible.
You see a good picture?
Yeah, really good picture. Really good picture. Okay.
Until this invention, the only way to check the contents of a shark's stomach was to cut it open, killing it in the process. Now scientists can put this technology to use, sparing the lives of countless sharks that would otherwise die in the name of research. Because a live bull shark is so difficult to come by in these waters, Eddie will take this opportunity to test his other invention, the bite meter. Ramon carefully places the apparatus in the shark's mouth while Eddie monitors the readings.
Okay, that's less than. Did she bite down? You call it out?
Hey.
Got it?
Got it.
Okay, that was 100. That was 44 ounces. We went down to 19 ounces. Bite. Okay.
Bite.
21. 19 ohms. 17 ohms. 17. He went down to 17. 15 ohms. 13 ohms. 15 ohms. Good. You're a good bite.
The outer shell of the bite meter is made of high-impact plastic, the same material which Eddie is incorporating into his revolutionary protective shark suit. The data that he collects here in Isla Mujeres will be used in determining the suit's final design.
Doesn't look bad.
Now this in the skin of the human being is terrible.
What I'm thinking is, this plastic is real thin plastic we did just for a test. The plastic I make the suit out of will be real thick and form-fitted, so with a smaller shark, it should be a lot better than skin.
As Eddie promised, the shark is released, tired but unharmed. Documenting this brief interlude with this awesome predator may, with time, lead to unlocking mysteries of its behavior that lay deep beneath the ocean, hidden from the eyes of man. Eddie Paul is back in his lab working on the information he gathered from the bite test in Isla Mujeres. With this data, he can calculate how many pounds of pressure the shark suit must withstand. The bite meter is constructed of 2 copper plates separated by conductive foam. It is placed in an arbor press with a gauge that measures pounds per square inch. The pounds are then calibrated to the corresponding ohm measurements that were generated by the jaws of the bull shark. After reassembling the bite meter to its original state, Eddie slowly increases the pressure until it reads 13 ohms, the lowest reading he observed during the test. It is found that 13 ohms corresponds to roughly 300 pounds per square inch.
Over the years, I've heard the same rumors that are going around about sharks and the amount of pressure they exert on their bite. They talk about thousands and thousands of pounds of pressure. To begin with, there's no way in the world they could put that much pressure on their jaws, or they'd bust their jaws, they'd shatter their teeth.
Eddie has placed a tooth of a bull shark in the press to see how many pounds it can withstand before it breaks.
I think it's been greatly exaggerated, and that people get confused over the bite force versus the amount of pressure at the tip of a tooth. Just like a woman's high heel shoe exerts a lot more pressure per square inch than the woman's weight is, because it's concentrated on a small area.
Sure enough, the tooth shattered with just a little over 300 pounds per square inch exerted on it. With his calculations completed, Eddie feels confident that he has enough information to proceed with the fabrication of his plastic shark suit.
We use an ABS plastic just because it's a thermal plastic, it's easy to vacuum form, and it keeps the cost down. The total cost of this suit should be a fraction of what the chainmail suits are that are in existence today. It's also lighter weight, easy to work with, easy to modify on location, and it gives an example of what can be done with a little bit of ingenuity and a few extra hours.
With this vacuum form technology, Eddie is able to design the molds so that they will conform to the dimensions of his body. As Eddie completes fabrication, the plastic shell looks more like medieval battle armor than a high-tech, lightweight suit that will protect him from the lethal bite of a shark. With his new shark suit in hand, Eddie arrives in the Bahamas, where he will meet with a collection of shark experts to test his groundbreaking invention. The Bahama Islands are a sanctuary for tourists who want to relax under the mild Caribbean sun. Nestled in the idyllic outskirts of the island's capital, among pristine blue shorelines and crystal-clear cays, lies the Nassau Scuba Center. It is here where shark experts as well as tourists come from all over the world to dive with the thriving populations of sharks that as of yet have not been affected by overfishing.
Your idea here looks good for a good start on adequate protection, and a little lighter than this.
Here in Nassau, Eddie Paul has met up with Tom Allen, veteran shark diver and user of the Neptune chainmail suit. Together they plan to test Eddie's new plastic suit and explore other techniques to protect divers from shark attacks.
A suit provide a little more bite protection to make it safer in the water if you want to work with sharks or just take pictures of them.
Chainmail generally is not a real good suit for swimming. It has a lot of drag. It's hard to move in. It's a weight belt in itself that you could not release. You'd have to get out of it. So there's some drawbacks to the chainmail suit, even though it's one of the better so far that we've had in the form of a suit to protect us from most shark bites.
The armor weighs over 25 pounds. If a diver were to receive a bite to his buoyancy compensator, he would have to get out of the heavy suit to ascend back to the surface.
I've designed this plastic suit for a number of reasons. One being, I wanted to keep the weight of the suit down to a minimum because the chainmail suits are negative, which is a real safety factor. Also, the chainmail suit is like driving an armored truck to the store. I think it's not necessary.
The chainmail is expensive. Body armor such as this can cost in excess of $4,500.
There are professionals out there risking their life every day feeding sharks that just feel they cannot afford this kind of expense, but they want the protection.
There are a number of relatively inexpensive alternatives. Tom is attempting to integrate a chemical shark repellent into a suit that a diver can wear. The chemical agent he is using is a surfactant and is found in most dishwashing soaps. By wrapping a bag filled with ordinary liquid soap around his arm, he will illustrate how a surfactant-laden suit might save a diver from a serious bite. With a chainmail suit under his wetsuit, Tom descends to test his theory. As a shark tries to take the bait, a mere sampling of the surfactant sends it frantically swimming away. Time and again, the sharks are repelled by the soap, either by departing rapidly or gagging on the bait and spitting it out. There are a number of methods for repelling sharks. Underwater photographer Noreen McKinney shows how a quick lunge with her camera can send a shark reeling. Using dive equipment such as a dive console or even a simple punch can dissuade a shark from investigating a human, an investigation which sometimes takes the form of a bite.
They're not out just to bite things. They'll move around and see things, occasionally recognize it as potential food, double check it. If they wanted to just bite things in the water, none of us would be safe in the water, but they don't. They're looking for a number of clues to key in on something to eat or to feed with or to bite.
Most attacks occur when a person is at the surface, as it is there where most of their time is spent, unaware of their underwater surroundings. Many of these hit-and-run attacks could be averted if eye contact were made, so the person could be ready to fend away the shark as it comes in to investigate its mistaken prey. It is this quest for a more practical means of protection from sharks that has brought Eddie Paul here to test the waters. Preparing his high-tech prototype shark suit, Eddie hopes that all of his tests are correct, for in a moment it will be him alone, with only rivets and plastic to protect his own flesh from the slashing teeth of the Caribbean reef sharks. Taking a quantum plunge, Eddie slowly glides toward the bottom. Like a modern-age knight in space-age gear, he is embarking on the first step of what could be a revolution in anti-shark protection. Acting as safety divers, Jeff White and Fraser Nivens of the Nassau Scuba Center make last-minute adjustments and alterations to the suit. When they are securely on the bottom, Jeff begins chumming in the sharks. Within moments, as if on cue, the sharks appear. Everyone, including Eddie, hopes that his suit will provide adequate protection. With a bait fish in hand, Eddie entices the sharks to come closer. They come in to investigate, and Eddie uses no deterrence to keep the frenzied sharks from biting. Jeff waits in the balance to protect Eddie in case of a mishap. As the bites occur, he wedges his arm between the bait and the scalpel-sharp teeth of the shark to test the suit.
One of the hardest things in the world to do is to stick your hand inside of the mouth of a shark. But once I got over the fear of doing it, and actually stuck my hand down inside of his throat, I couldn't even tell. I could feel my arm shaking, but I felt no pressure whatsoever.
By establishing that the plastic suit provides as much protection as the chainmail suit, Eddie and Tom seize the moment and conduct a test. They take turns thrashing their arms to determine whether these sharks are more attracted to a motionless diver or one who is moving erratically. Even with the chum bucket under the still diver, the sharks continue to be attracted to erratic movement. It is through their highly developed motion detection sense that they are able to hone in on these clues. Though not conclusive, this test indicates that a person who has observed a shark in the area should not try to frantically escape. Rather, he should swim slowly away with consistent movements, keenly aware of his surroundings. Until scientists are able to determine exactly what factors make sharks bite humans, shark experts will have to protect themselves. With the development of shark protection devices like these, scientists will have increased accessibility to study their habits, and with time, decipher how to ensure their survival. Here in the Bahamas, shark experts are not the only ones who have the privilege of diving with sharks. The Nassau Scuba Center also provides tourists with the opportunity to see sharks face to face.
We opened Nassau Scuba Center in the middle of November 1990. We started doing the shark dives almost immediately. We knew it was something that was going to take off, that people wanted to do. There was interest generated. People seem to be really interested in these creatures. After a few weeks of experimenting on how to feed them and the best way to run the dive, it really took off, and people have been asking for it ever since. It's not something.
With over 400 shark dives logged, the Nassau Scuba Center has an impeccable safety record. Not one customer has ever been attacked. Jeff White, dive master for the Nassau Scuba Center, is in charge of the dive.
When I give the briefing to the divers before the dive, you can see some of the fear and apprehension on their faces. They're wondering, how many sharks are we going to see and how close are they going to get and stuff like that. But we always tell them that they're going to have a safe, enjoyable dive, to stay, nice and still on the bottom and just watch. Gives them the opportunity to see sharks up close, the feeding of them for pictures and video.
Almost immediately, as the divers get into position, over a dozen Caribbean reef sharks appear on the scene. Even though this species of shark is not notorious for attacks on humans, they are still capable of inflicting a nasty bite.
It's very important that they stay put and stay in one place, because something floating off the bottom is generally a target for the sharks. So we have them stay put on the bottom. Another thing that we tell them to do is we tell them to keep their hands to themselves, because these sharks are really incredible creatures, and they can bend 180 degrees, and they can turn around and bite you if you reach out to touch them.
The divers form a semicircle around Jeff, who is donned in a protective chainmail shark suit. They are to remain at a safe distance of 20 to 30 feet while he baits the sharks.
Anytime you go on a dive with sharks, there is a danger factor. Every time we do it, we tend to feel really comfortable with the sharks, but everybody needs to be aware that you always never take these sharks for granted. Sharks are unpredictable. They're uncontrollable. There's nothing that we can do to, if they decide that they want to bite someone.
Some comfort is derived from knowing this band of sharks personally. On each dive, the same sharks come from nearby reefs to be fed by hand, and many of them have earned nicknames. Chopfin, for instance, is a local shark that has had the tip of his tail severed.
Over the years, sharks have always had this bad image about them as being a bloodthirsty, man-eating type of creature in the water, that when one sees you, it's going to hunt you down, swim up behind you, and eat you. And that's just not true. By doing this shark dive the way that we do it, we're providing people with the opportunity to see sharks firsthand in the water in a safe, protected way of doing the dive. And when they come back from the dive, they have a whole new respect for this creature. They're beautiful, they're a lot of fun to dive with, and by doing a safe, enjoyable experience like this, hopefully people will understand that these creatures need to be preserved and need to be taken care of.
The education that the divers receive today is sure to remain in their minds forever. For them, the myth that sharks are man-eating monsters is an antiquated notion, kept only by those who have not had the privilege of swimming with the most misunderstood fish of the sea.
Well, I was surprised. I thought it was going to be more fear involved, but it was actually so interesting that the fear factor wasn't even, it wasn't a factor.
I was scared to death before I went on. I was on the boat all the way over, oh my God. But then once I got down there, I relaxed and it was really nice.
It's probably the most incredible dive anybody could ever have. To have 10 or 12 sharks swimming around you that are bigger than you are, you can't believe it until you've been down there.
Well, it's a really incredible, enjoyable dive. Sharks going within inches of my head, you duck down to avoid them. Absolutely incredible experience. I'd recommend it to any diver.
In a world that views sharks as an underutilized resource, shark dives here in Nassau could come to an end. The government of the Bahamas is considering allowing Taiwanese fishermen to harvest sharks in this area.
The Taiwanese longliners, if they come into the Bahamas area and they start fishing this particular area, they could wipe out the entire area. It's especially important for us out at the shark dive. If they came in and caught all of our sharks, then it would be devastating for us.
It is hard to imagine descending into these deep blue waters and not seeing the serene sight of a shark gliding gracefully over the reef. If the Taiwanese longliners are permitted to fish here, the only vision of these magnificent animals would be our ghostly memories of Chopfin and the other sharks who used to come here for their afternoon snack. With shark research in its infancy, one can do little more than speculate upon their true nature. Man's perceptions about these animals is steeped in fear, resulting in what appears to be an unconscious will to rid them from our oceans. Gary Miller, director of Coral World in Nassau, explains.
Most people seem to have an exaggerated fear about sharks, and it's more, the fear greatly outweighs the real and actual danger that sharks do pose to human beings. An ocean without sharks, I believe, would be a completely different place than what we have today. Sharks do serve a vital role in the ocean, and without the sharks, it's very difficult to say what exactly would happen, but I believe that the effects from such a thing would be far-reaching and probably more devastating than most people think, and that we should do everything that we can to protect sharks and not allow our emotions carry us away thinking that sharks should be eliminated and we should get rid of all sharks because they're bad. It simply isn't true.
Sharks are not the fiercest of terrestrial creatures, nor do they roam the ocean searching for human prey. Man's desire for the flesh of the shark, however, lies far beyond providing the people of the world with sustenance. Our utilization of this resource is wasteful at best. With the rapid expansion of commercial and recreational shark fishing, we are catching sharks faster than they can reproduce themselves.
I realize that when we talk about sharks, it's more than one species. But in any case, killing 250 million of anything that takes 30 years to mature and barely reproduces itself, I mean, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to know that just won't work.
Anytime a shark is caught, there is a possibility that it is a pregnant female, resulting in the killing of not just one shark, but wiping out a future generation. The increasing exploitation of sharks leads to reduced future reproduction, which ultimately results in the collapse of population levels.
You know, the National Marine Fisheries Service is empowered through the good graces of the American people to protect our marine resources. And to me, it's sort of incredible. The fishermen believe they own the sharks. They don't own the sharks. The government believes it owns the sharks. It can tell the people what to do about sharks. They don't own the sharks. The people own all of the sharks. That is to say, it's a national treasure, a resource owned by all the people. And through our goodness, we give our tax money to the government to protect these animals.
You know, my pet peeve is the government sends us notices. They threaten they're going to do this or do that. And the time limit comes. Like, for instance, we were going to have this 5 million pound quota. It was supposed to start on the 1st of January. January came, no word. February came, still no word. Right now, we're told that they're going to make the quota retroactive. They could shut us down any time. I've got boat payments to make, insurance payments to make. I've got crew to worry about. I've got mortgage payments to make. I don't know whether I'm even going to have a job tomorrow. They could shut us down any time. It scares me.
These guys work hard for their money. And they were duped. They were duped by the government into believing that sharks, that the fishing for sharks was a valuable occupation. The reason for that is the government suggested that sharks were what they euphemistically called an underutilized resource. Even with the total knowledge of the past history of the boom and bust nature of shark fisheries, they led fishermen to believe that they could go out, make a good living, that they should mortgage their houses, buy boats, and brave the sea, which is really what they do. It's a tough life, to catch sharks, when that's just not the case. There will never be a case where a shark population can be targeted in a way that is sustainable.
It is an undisputed fact that sharks are in trouble, but hopefully they are not doomed. With the work of people like Ramon Bravo, through education and raising public awareness, the rapid depletion of this resource can hopefully be stabilized and ultimately benefit both humans and sharks.
It isn't easy to protect these animals. They've earned such a terrible reputation given to them by the movies, television, and newspapers. I think the way to protect them is to regulate their capture. Weight quotas could be set not only in Mexico, but also in the US, Japan, and Europe. We should never put our own motive ahead of this wonderful animal in a struggle to remain in existence.
With the inventions of people like Eddie Paul and the collaboration of shark researchers worldwide, the shroud of mystery can slowly be lifted to reveal how we can better cohabitate with these creatures. People are now learning that sharks are not agents of death and destruction. Rather, they are amazing animals with unjustly terrible reputations. These age-old attitudes, as irrational as they may be, must be abolished if we are able to save the shark from the most diabolical killer on Earth, ourselves.